story so far, the new album from Elvis Monroe on Curtain Call Records is coming out. Like,
so all
very,
I got
very
out
soon.
of that whole story was blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
Chased by chicks. Now I'm going to be a singer. Evs.
Yeah, Evs.
Evs. But you know, it's funny, stories. And we have, from two opposite sides of the world, a lot of synergy in the same lane.
Right.
You weren't called to music, you were called to sports. Same as me.
Right.
In my past life, I was taller. I was a basketball player. I still think I am. I mean, I can still shoot.
Yeah,
Can't
you
jump
can.
over a painted line anymore. But my first passion, my first love. I mean, music was always in my life. It wasn't a mystery. One of my very first love was the piano. My dad's mum, my nana, was living with us, and she had a piano, and I used to sit on her lap and tinker around and play. My mum left a guitar laying in the house, a nylon string guitar that I picked up and dicked around with as a kid, and I sort of fell in love with that instrument. And in 1986, we had a thing called the Trading Post, which was like a magazine, kind of like Craigslist. And there was this store in, I think the name of the city, and you know, I lived in Melbourne. And the little suburb, I think it was called Kilsyth, was the name of the place. And there was the Trading Post, and it had like used lawnmowers and beaten up bicycles and old cameras. And there was stuffed in the corner under a shelf, there was like an amp and an electric guitar. It was a Python 10-watt amp, black with orange writing. And
He said Python, by the way. I'm just translating for you guys. So that's all.
Yeah. and I was like, we would actually say Python.
Python?
Python. It's a Python amp. I was trying to be American. Didn't work. Failed. 10-watt amp, hidden behind some bikes, dusty as hell. And I like looked at it. I was just standing there like, it's the coolest looking thing I've ever seen. The following week, I was going on a school retreat. And the retreat cost $100, which was all the money in the world to our family at the time. And my parents had saved up. They were going to send me on the retreat. We were going to go to this little valley and live in cabins and ride horses and shoot archery and do fun outdoor stuff. And I asked my parents, I said, if I stay home from the retreat and forfeit going there, can you buy me the amp and the guitar as a trade? And it was $100 for the amp and the guitar as well. So they're like, you sure you want to do that? I'm like, I'm absolutely positive. I need to have this in my life. So they bought me this electric guitar and amp.
Wow.
So I stayed home all week and I just cranked it up like I was in Spinal Tap. Wailing on this guitar, and I just fell in love with what it was. That was my entry into rock and roll, you know.
Right.
So piano was my first instrument. Guitar was my passion. But alongside of all this and going and keeping with you was basketball.
Right.
So my dream as a kid was I wanted to be a basketball star and I wanted to be a rock star. That were the two jobs I wanted to do. And I remember distinctly fast forwarding in life, you know, I was practicing guitar like a crazy person and studying piano, and I would practice basketball like I was going to the NBA. You know, that was a dream. And I moved high schools in 1990. So my first year, basically, if you were to equate it to Americans, it would be your first senior part of high school. The last year 10, 11, and 12 are our three senior years. So I went to a new high school, which is tough as a kid. The very first day in that school, the teacher made everyone in class stand up the front and, hey, my name's Jimmy, and I want to be a civil engineer. You know, woohoo! It sounds so exciting. And hi, I'm Steve. I'm going to be a carpenter.
Right.
I don't know any kids. My first day in school, I get up. Hey, my name's Ben, and I'm new in town, and I want to be a rock star and a basketball star. And of course, that went down like a lead balloon. The teacher is like, well, that's great, but you got to pick real jobs. That's what my teacher told me. Got to pick real jobs. So that didn't sit real well with me. So as respectfully as I could say, hey, they are real jobs. And the teacher's like, no, they're not real jobs. And I'm like, no, they are.
Right.
I said, you have a tape, right? Because this was before CDs. And they went, yeah, well, I got a tape. I said, okay. Someone had to play on the tape to put the music on there for you to listen to. That's a rock star. I want to do that. And you've seen basketball on TV. There has to be teams that play basketball that go on the TV. I'm going to be on one of those teams. So he told me to sit down and stop speaking. So I sat down, and I was kind of frustrated and a little bit embarrassed, but I stuck to my guns. I wanted to play basketball. I wanted to play music. That was my focus in life. All I did was practice and practice. And I had amazing parents, amazing family that they didn't laugh at me for my dreams. The only deal with them was that I had to keep up my schoolwork. As long as all the extracurricular practice and work didn't interfere with my grades, I was okay. And it got to the point where in high school, coming into the senior years, everyone had to pick a college to go visit because we call it university. Mm-hmm. They want to go to their uni. We want to check out what uni they're going to go to. I had no plans on going to university because it didn't fit into my life plan of being a basketball star and a music star, So I remember I had to go on this trip to the local La Trobe University. And so when I got there, I just asked which way the gym was. And I went in and I just worked on my shot, shot free throws and 3-pointers all day long, waited for the kids to get back on the bus, and we drove home. Wow. Fast forwarding on the basketball side of things, I got a letter in the mail when I was 16 years old. And it was an invitation by the Gippsland Lakers to try out for their team in 1992. So this was my senior year of high school. And I'm like, oh my God, I got an invitation to try out for the pros. So in Australia, we have the CBA and the NBL. The Gippsland Lakers were in the CBA. So it's like the league right under the, like in America, I don't know what they have for that now, but like the G League, I guess, or whatever, development for the NBA, which is a pro league. And it's a stepping stone to the big time, Right. I was a kid in high school and I got a letter in the mail saying, come try out. So I ran to my dad. I'm like, Dad, we got to do this. And he's like, hell no. And I'm like, why? And he goes, because you're just a boy. Like, you're playing against men. Like, I said, so what? Let me try.
Right.
What's the worst that can happen? They're going to knock me down and get back up again. I'm not scared. He's like, okay. It was a 2-hour drive to the stadium where the tryouts were, and there was 120 people trying out, and we come to find out that they were looking for 2 players.
Oh, wow.
So I went out there and I gave it everything I got, and at the end of the practice session, you all sat down on the floor and they read your name out if they needed you back the next day. I got my name called. I'm like, hey, I made it. So we had to drive back home 2 hours. The next day, I had to go to school. Then I had to drive another 2 hours back to practice. My dad's like, wow, lucky we're not going to be doing this for long. This is just a lot of driving, And I'm like, I know, Dad, sorry, but, it's pretty cool that I got it, Yeah. And my dad's so proud,
Right.
And he's a tough old man. He was a man's man. So I think he was, quietly excited.
Right.
That I was giving it a go. And anyway, long story over, every day they'd read out names. My name kept getting called out. I made the cut. I was one of the 2 people. Whoa. At 16 years old. So it caused a bit of a conundrum in our family. Was I had to travel interstate for these games on the weekends, sometimes a weeknight, which is really going to affect my school. Mm-hmm. But it's really what I wanted to do in life.
Right.
So my mum and dad, being super cool as they are, went to the Board of Education and asked for a special allowance for me to do an extra year of high school to complete the last half of the work. So they cut my workload down by 50% as long as I agreed to do an extra year. So I actually did 2 senior years of high school because I was traveling with the basketball team. As a 16-year-old playing with the pros,
Oh, wow.
So it was an amazing experience.
16-year-olds are playing in high school basketball.
Yeah, and I'm playing with the boys. I mean, I got in my first bar brawl at 16, sticking up for my bandmates, my teammates, And Australia does it a little differently than America, like that,
Right.
So it was an amazing experience as a kid. I did the extra year of school, and I remember sitting in my school exam, ironically in the basketball hall of my school, just writing down these answers to questions I had no idea. Like, my heart wasn't in school, it was in music and basketball. And I'd already got an invitation from the National League team, my favorite team called the Magic in Melbourne, to go and get worked out by the coach.
Right.
The plan was he was going to look at me and send me to America to play in college. You know, I was going to get a scholarship to play and then step to the NBA. That was the thoughts.
Right.
I worked him out. We did, there's a real famous stadium in Melbourne called Albert Park Stadium. We walked in there, my eyes were this big. I was like, wow, you know. He worked me out, and at the end, it was height of Australian summer, kind of like here in Vegas, hot as hell.
Right.
You know, and this was an old basketball stadium from the 50s with no AC. It was hot. And at the end, I'm laying there in a pool of sweat, and he came over to me and goes, all right, you're the first guy I've worked out that hasn't thrown up doing an individual. He said, well done, you know? And he said, I'd like to offer you a spot on the team instead of going to America. And I'm like, what? Like, I'm going to play for the Magic? And he's like, yeah, we got a spot in the roster. I think we could keep you here and develop you. And, you know, you're going to be a really great point guard for us.
Wow.
And I don't remember, I was like, at this point, I was just turning 18, you know? And it was my biggest dream come true to play for the team that I was like, it was my team. So I said yes, and I made my living at that point coaching basketball clinics in schools and teaching them, you know, and go in representing the team in my team uniform, teach 200 kids a couple of basketball skills, talk to them about work ethic and training, and go on to the next school. That was kind of, I got paid to do that. Then I'd practice. You know, we had 5 times a day we'd practice. And I remember one of the clinics, the coaching clinics, got booked at a school where I grew up. So I was able to go back to my high school in the team tracksuit, knock on the door of the teacher. I go, remember me? I'm the one that said he couldn't do this for a job. And I was able to tell the kids, follow your dreams, you know, because this happened.
Yeah.
And all the while during this time in the back, I'm always practicing, you know, my music and playing in bands. And I even put on like little music performances in the foyer of the arena before, you know, because I was like one of the low dudes on the totem pole in the team. You know, I was just a development player, so I never got much playing time at that point. You know, I was 18 years old, you know. And long story over, I tore my knee in half, and it made me realize I wasn't invincible, you know. And my dad had always said, and my mum, one day I'm going to have to choose between music and basketball. So at one point, that choice came up where I rehabbed my knee and I made the team again, more for personal reasons of proving I could do it.
Right.
But during the rehab of my knee, my music really took over. And I started gigging a lot, and I was making more money playing guitar than I was playing basketball, and trying to be self-sustaining as a kid, not asking your parents for help, you know. Basketball in Australia doesn't pay what it does here in America. We have a much smaller marketplace, you know, to play to. So I was out till 4 or 5 in the morning playing in bars, and then I go to practice at 7 o'clock, and I was just like killing myself, you know. So I got an offer from a band to go and tour Asia. So I had to make a decision then, choose music or basketball.
What band was that?
It was a band called Really Joel, the Australian tribute to Billy Joel. I could care less about Billy Joel at the time, but it was an opportunity to go on the road and play music. The money was great. I was 20 years old.
Right.
So I went to practice, and after practice, we all sat as a team and we were stretching. I said, hey guys, this has been amazing, but I got to follow my heart. I'm going to go play guitar. And they used to call me Benny the Bug. And coach was like, Bug, we love you. We wish you'd stay, but you got to follow your heart. So we're full support. So off I went on my music career. Rewinding a little back to when I was 16. I'm in the gym at my high school shooting free throws. And one of the scouts that first found me came through, and he was talking to me about the Olympic Games. He said, you're on course to play at the 2000 Olympic Games. And I'm like, okay, I'll keep working hard. I'm going to make the Australian team. I'm going to play at the 2000 Olympics. Very important part of the story, playing at the 2000 Olympics. So when I quit playing basketball, obviously that dream went out the window. 2 weeks after I quit playing basketball, the manager took off with all the money and the deposits from the shows. So the tour didn't happen. The band fell apart. I quit playing pro basketball to join a band that didn't happen.
Oh.
So I was heartbroken. I didn't know what to do.
Oh, dude.
So I got a job as a storeman in a music store, stacking boxes. And on my lunch break, I would go out and I would sell guitars. And I would sell more guitars on my lunch break than the manager would in a whole day.
Okay.
And so they promoted me from box boy to guitar manager in like the first week.
Oh, wow.
You know, so then I was managing the guitar section in a big music store, which was a lot of responsibility. And then it allowed me to meet a lot of players. So I started getting gigs. I got an opportunity with a band called Brill, which was made up of a couple of famous dudes from other big Australian bands, Chocolate Starfish and Pseudo Echo. They were big deals. They had this new cool band, and I was the young protege guitar player that they brought on board. So I was able to quit my job as in the music store and go on tour in Australia in the back of a Tarago with these rock stars, you know. Right. And that opportunity led to a phone call from Savage Garden. And they called me and said, hey, we're looking for a guitar player. They flew me to Brisbane. I auditioned. Darren pulled me outside. We auditioned in the basement of a house. This was before Savage Garden blew up in this residential neighborhood. We were playing Truly Madly Deeply, Into the Moon and Back, and Break Me, Shake Me, and all the hits in the basement of a house.
The hits that weren't hits yet, though.
Yeah, no one had even heard the record at this point.
Yeah.
And Darren's like, can you be a rock star? And I'm like, give me the gig and I'll show you. You know, so they had success in Australia. So Australia knew they were hits, but the rest of the world had not heard of the band yet. So it was a really big opportunity. So I said yes. The next day they called me and said, okay, pack your stuff. We're leaving in 10 days. And I don't know when you'll be home. So I got on the aeroplane with a suitcase and a guitar and a pedal board. And my very first gig was with Bon Jovi and No Doubt and the Spice Girls in India, in the arena. Like my life changed in 10 days. Fast forward to the year 2000. I'm standing at the Olympic Stadium in Australia. We're in the round. There's 133,000 people in the arena. We have the biggest song in the world. We just released a new record. And I'm playing the 2000 Olympics in my home country.
Whoa.
Who would have known that I was going to make it, but just not playing basketball. I did play the Olympics.
Which is that
tattoo.
Your tattoo.
This tattoo was on my guitar at the Olympic Games. I remember looking down and going, if I ever get a tattoo, I'm getting that. You know? And 3 of my teammates were wearing our Australian green and gold colors, came up to me on the ground with all the other athletes from around the world, and they were yelling, Benny the Bug, Benny the Bug, you know. So for me, it was so amazing having the support of my teammates.
Right.
And the whole world watching, you know. I grew up in a town with 80 houses and one shop, and I thought I was going to play basketball for a living, and here we are telling stories.
Yep. Dude, I know that story, but that was even more detail, so.
Right.
That was awesome. I loved it.
We talk a lot.
We talk a lot.
But they're true stories.
But the story so far, and that's inspiring, and that's what this is about, and that's what we're trying to, we just want you guys out there to understand who we are and where this music comes from. So again, Curtain Call Records, Elvis Monroe, story so far.